Do you find it hard to explain to friends and family what you now do? Are you wasting valuable time by attempting to figure out challenges on your own? We have created a community for ex-corporate people running their own business who want to live a life they love whilst giving back to their community. This is the Build, Live, Give show. We bring you first-hand experiences of guests going through many of the struggles you face each and every day. We get real with no corporate BS. And now your host, Paul Higgins.
Welcome to the Build, Live, Give show. I'm Paul Higgins and I'm your show host. And today we have Kirrily Graham from the Christina Children's Foundation Australia. Kirrily started actually as an interior designer, went into sales and was doing really well until a new GM came on board and unexpectedly let her go. That was a really big shock for her, but she went through a career change coach who was excellent, and she decided then to go into coaching and leadership development, which she really loved. But after 8 years, she realized that there was just nowhere to go. She'd sort of hit a glass ceiling. So she left that and started her own business in that space with a partner, Joe, a business partner. And she was doing some work for the foundation in the background. And then late one night, she realized that the foundation really needed her and she wanted to fully absorb herself in a passion. So she left and started full-time with the foundation. She gives some brilliant advice and she really talks passionately about how you can help the foundation and then most importantly, help impoverished children in Vietnam and Mongolia. So what I'll do now is hand you over to Kirrily Graham from the Christina Children's Foundation. If you're enjoying listening to these journeys, just letting you know we have a community for ex-career people running profitable businesses just like you. It's called BLG Boost. You get exclusive access to a forum of like-minded peers answering your most pressing questions 24/7. You get specific action tips to solve your most common challenges. You get trusted suppliers to remove lost time. You also get access to member exclusive offers to save you money. You also get access to myself as a coach directly on a one-on-one basis. You get weekly videos from global experts. And finally, you get monthly webinars solving topics mentioned in popular threads. If you're tired of being alone and want to rapidly grow your dream business, go to buildlivegive.com/BLG Boost. This link is in the show notes. Please check it out. Okay, I will see you inside. We're going to get to know a lot about you and the foundation today, but why don't we start with a bit of your background?
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Paul. It's great to be here. So my background, it's quite varied actually. I started off after high school and studying interior design. Really enjoyed it, but I really didn't enjoy the people. I found it a really tough industry to be in. So I ended up in hospitality and from there went into administration and then into sales. And then later on, after moving down to Melbourne with my role to do a national key account manager role, I actually was made redundant. And during that time, I saw a careers psychologist, and that was where an interest in training and development came up. And that was really something that I'd never really thought about. But going through the process with her was it was brilliant. And I was able to sort of really look into things that I was really enjoying about what I'd done in my past roles. And I thought, yeah, I would really like to do that. And so it was a really good opportunity for me to transition into sales in training, which, I've been in for it was about 10, 15 years. And, that was something that, 6 years ago, over 6 years ago, I started my own business with my business partner, Joanna. And we did that for 6.5 years.
Excellent. And what's something outside of work that your friends or family would know about you, but the BLG community wouldn't?
Oh, probably that most people wouldn't know about me now, actually. People that wouldn't be in my life now wouldn't know that I was a complete Doctor Who freak when I was a kid. It was my highlight of my day. I used to, make sure that I was in front of the TV every night at 6 o'clock so that I wouldn't miss my episode of Doctor Who. I had all the magazines, the posters and everything, and something I really loved. Yeah.
Great. And is that continued? Like, is this...
It hasn't actually. And I think there's a part of me that's a little reluctant to sort of get back into it because I could be quite, obsessed with it again.
Great. And, what was if you go back, like you said, you had some really good changes, but when you were made redundant, just take us back to that moment. How did you, were you blindsided? How did you feel when that
Yeah, I
occurred?
really was blindsided. Actually, that's a really, really good way to put it. I've been working for the company for 5 years, and as I said, I moved down. I actually moved from Brisbane down to Melbourne to take on a national key account role, and I did really well at it. I actually was really succeeding in my role, exceeding all my targets. And I thought was doing really well, but there was a new GM that came in, and there was some changes that were being made, and I didn't actually think that my role was really at stake. But when they decided to consolidate 2 roles in Melbourne down to 1, we both applied, and I really thought I would be okay, but it didn't work out that way. So I was quite devastated, and it took quite a while emotionally to sort of get through that. But the careers psychologist really made a difference, because it really helped me to define what to put my focus on and where I was going to go. And so even during that process, I think it took about 3 months to find another job. But going through that process, I was really resolute about what I was going for. So I didn't panic and didn't just sort of take the first things that came up, because I was, really grounded in what I was going to be good at, what I was going to enjoy. And it was just one of the best decisions that I made. And I constantly refer her to people I know that are sort of going through those transitions or thinking about going through those transitions, because I just found the whole process so valuable. And it was a very detailed one where she did a lot of analysis, like a psychometric assessment. And she found the people who had profiles similar to me who really enjoyed their jobs. And it was so diverse. It was, everything from park ranger, which I kind of eliminated pretty quickly because I really hate spiders, to occupational therapy, to business owner, which I dismissed at the time, which was funny. But, when I started to narrow things down, it really became quite clear to me, what I wanted to do. So it was a really valuable exercise.
Great. And would you like to give a shout out to that person so other people could potentially look her up?
Well, it was 1+1, and she's in Melbourne.
Excellent. Well, we'll put the link to her in the show notes. And it was interesting. I went through a slightly different situation, but I was actually offered a job, and then overnight it was withdrawn, and then asked to go and apply again for that job to the market. And I was about to leave anyway, so that was a catalyst for me. But I worked with a company called Peoplescape, and I did a thing called Savile Wave, and it was a personality profiling tool. And basically it said, look, these are the companies that you should work with, and these are the companies that you definitely shouldn't work with. And it was the company I'd worked with for 18 years was definitely in the bucket of do not work with. So look, for people listening, I think, I actually paid for an outplacement service sort of, I think it was back in sort of 2007, because I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. And I just paid it out of my own dollars, and I got enormous value out of it. And it seems like you did as well. So if people are sort of listening to this show thinking, I'm not really happy with what I'm doing, and I'm looking for some options, there's some 2 people. So 1+1, we'll put the links in there, and also Peoplescape to do it. And then I suppose from there, did you go straight into the business with Joe, or was there a bit of a gap before?
No, actually, I worked in a sales and business development role for a company called Leadership Management Australia for 8 years. And I really loved that role. It was a great organisation, one of the best set of sort of leadership and frontline management training programs, and really, really excellent at delivering behavioural change. The programs are delivered over a number of months. People have projects to work on that are really relevant to their business. They have a coach, they have a mentor. And, the people were just getting such fantastic results out of the program. And so I really loved, being, involved in that process, taking people through that. And, in that I also developed, started doing coaching myself, and was actually going towards doing facilitation towards the end as well. But then it got to a point, after 8 years, I was actually working for a licensee, and there wasn't really a lot of option for me to really move up in that licensee business. And I needed new challenges, and that's really where I started, I suppose, getting that out of my work with the foundation. So I actually started volunteering with the charity at that point to, start looking at some things that I could do to help in regards to fundraising and marketing and that area. So, it was a bit of a process of learning over the 8 years before I actually stepped out and went into business with Joe.
Excellent. And just going back on that behavioural change, because I know that it's a personal passion topic for me around behaviour change, and we in the BLG community, in the club, we're constantly looking to better behaviour change. Just give me give listeners a couple of key tips on, from your experience, what is a great way of changing habits.
Well, a lot of the practices that we used to use in our programs, it's all about multisensory learning. It's not about just going to a workshop for half a day or a day and the world changes for you. You retain maybe about 15 to 20% of the information that you get at those sessions. So really, learning is lifelong, and it's something that you take on. So if you're looking for tips in regards to behavioural change, one of the key places to start is behaviour actually comes from your attitudes towards certain things. And so even identifying what those things are. So if there are behaviours that you have that are not sort of functional or effective, sometimes it's just starting to look at, what's my attitude towards that, that particular behaviour or thing that I need to do. So, we used to go through a process of identifying, okay, what are the areas where you want to develop? And then looking at identifying, okay, what are the attitudes that you have to that? What are the blocks that are in the road? And some of the really basic things used to be, around delegation. I think most people, as they have grown and developed in roles, really struggle to delegate effectively. So it's about identifying, well, why is it that you find it hard to delegate? And it quite often is, thinking, well, nobody's going to do it as good as I am, or it's just quicker for me to do it. Once you start to identify those thoughts that you have, you can then actually start to address those. And that's where developing new habits really takes you to do that over time. And so that's why our programs were so great, because we used to work with people, coaching them week on, week out over maybe 3 or 4 months, and really look at setting some goals around how they might delegate a range of tasks that they have, in their role that they could delegate to their team members.
Excellent. Look, that's some great advice. And if I just go to when you finally stepped out with Joe and went into your own business, what were some of the key fears that you can remember looking back now at that time when you finally said, okay, I'm going to now go and start my own business?
Well, I think that, a lot of the fears really, or for me personally, I was always a bit of a highly driven and high achiever. So the biggest thing that always got in the road was that I would take no action if I thought I was going to fail. So, a big part of my, my fear was just stepping out there and doing it. And I think that the other thing was really, and I don't know if it's so much a fear, but a self-awareness thing around, I knew for myself that, I really enjoy people's company, and I draw my energy from working with people and in a team. So for me, one of the most important things was not to do it on my own, to actually go out and do it in a partnership with somebody, because I just knew that, doing it by myself wasn't going to work for me. And of course, I think the biggest fear for most people is that risk you take financially, giving up a regular income coming in every month or every fortnight. That definitely is something that can be a big block. And that was a big fear for me as well.
Yeah. Was there ever a time where you thought, this is actually a little too difficult, I might go back to corporate?
Constantly.
Yeah.
Constantly. Pretty much every month when the bills are due.
Yeah, and what was the key reason why you didn't go back?
Probably because of my drive and competitiveness, but I think that, when you start your own business, you usually there's a passion there or a belief that you have. And it's about actually being really committed to that and working through. Like, one of the things that I would say is a strength of mine is that I'm happy to take on a challenge. So, it was not a problem for me in the sense of what am I going to learn from this, or what do I need to do different. And, Joe and I both, I suppose, fortunate in that, being in the training and development industry, we both had done a lot of training, had done a lot of self-development. So we knew and had the tools to actually be able to reflect on those things and have the conversations. And sometimes there were some really tough conversations that we had to have. So, we were able to go through that.
Yeah, and I know that in a moment we're going to get into what you do now, but what was the reason that you ended up leaving that business and moving to the foundation?
Well, I've been involved with the foundation for nearly 17 years. As I said, I sort of had been working and volunteering part-time pretty much since I moved to Melbourne 18 years ago. And, at the end of last year, I had actually at one point resigned I had a part-time paid role with the foundation, and I'd resigned and was committed to focusing on the business 100%, because I found that the role at the charity was really growing and was taking more and more time and was a bit of a distraction. But, making that decision to resign and just come back into a board role. But after about a year, it didn't go so well for the foundation. And so I ended up coming back in part-time again. And, after about a year or so being back in it, and we took a trip over to Vietnam as one of our challenges. We do these charity challenges where we take groups of people over, do cycling trips through Vietnam and Cambodia. And, I just saw, I see the kids and I see the team, and I just see the difference that the organisation makes. And as much as I loved what we did in our training business, my heart was really with the foundation, and it wasn't even a big decision. I just remember one night after an event, it was about 1 o'clock, I was exhausted, we'd had a great night, and I just went, that's it, I'm in. And I, just had the conversation with Joe. It was just like, I knew that, this is where I was, my heart was, and where I really knew I could make a greater difference.
Great. And does Joe continue to run the training business?
Yeah, she does. It is still going. It's sort of scaled down a little bit because it is just herself, but yeah, it's still going now, which is great.
Excellent. Well, the next section is the build section. So what I'd love you to do is just tell us, if you walk into an event, or people walk into one of your events for the Christina Noble Foundation, how do you describe what you do? So tell us.
Yeah, my role is really about running the Australia and New Zealand office. So we operate in Vietnam and Mongolia with impoverished children and families. And, we have a number of small offices around the world that support both of those countries and the operations there by raising money, raising awareness, and really empowering the communities in Australia and New Zealand to do that as well. And, the mission of the foundation is really about breaking the poverty cycle through educating kids, keeping them in school, providing them with good health, but not only just those sort of basic, putting food in their stomach and education, but, also nurturing them so that they have a complete childhood, so that they get access to, love, being protected, having access to things like music, arts and sports, and just really, nurturing any dreams that they have to fulfill on those.
Great. And look, I know there's, we've had lots of great discussions, and I know there's an event, I think is just happened in Melbourne, in Sydney.
In Melbourne, yes. We just had a gala dinner. So that was actually being organised by one of the people who is attending the charity challenge that we're doing in Vietnam in October. So Mel, who is somebody I know through one of my networking groups, is coming on the cycling challenge. We're doing over 400 kilometres from Hanoi down to Ho Chi Minh City. And so as a fundraising event, we actually did a joint one together and did a gala dinner in Melbourne, which was a lot of fun. We had a great guest speaker with Pauline Nguyen, who's the co-founder of the Red Lantern restaurant in Sydney with her brother Luke Nguyen. And yeah, lots of dancing and silent auctions and stuff. It was a really great night.
Excellent. And normally I ask people to talk about their business, but given you're in the foundation, who are the sort of people that you're looking for to support the foundation? Whether it's through certain sponsorships or through a voluntary capacity. I'd love to know who you're sort of looking for, because there are lots of people listening to this podcast that haven't found their give at the moment. But they're certainly looking for that, and I'd love for you to describe sort of your ideal person so that they can see if that's a match for them.
Yeah, look, really, we're a small grassroots organisation, and we have a very, very sort of small team here in Melbourne that looks after Australia and New Zealand. And so, a lot of our initiatives are really around having our community take on doing fundraising and bringing awareness about the foundation. So as we want to grow in the next couple of years, one of my, I've actually come into the organisation full-time only at the beginning of this year, and one of my key initiatives, given my background in training and development in the HR space, is I really want to develop the corporate social responsibility aspect. So working with organisations who would like to bring that corporate social responsibility into their business. And that can be any business from an individual consultant right up to multinational. There are so many different ways in which we can partner with organisations and their teams and their people to actually bring that into their business. It could be through things like participating in fun runs, taking on a charity challenge. We can do team building activities. We can have, weekly or monthly or annual, giving events that are held in the workplace or somewhere else. And there are so many ways in which we can get involved. And I would really love to, hear from people that are, that would like to bring that into their business or have that in their business and are looking for some, really great organisation to partner with. And the other one would probably be around our noble challenges. So if anybody that's really interested in an epic adventure that's, cycling through Vietnam, or I've just got back from being in Mongolia for a couple of weeks where we were cycling and hiking and horse riding and seeing and experiencing one of the most stunning countries in a very unique way. So they're two of the key areas. And of course, being a small team, we'd love expertise. We need it to grow our team. We'd love to have people who have different areas of expertise that could, work with us in a long-term basis, ongoingly in, areas like legal, also governance, marketing, and business development. There'd be areas that we could actually really get a lot of value from having somebody that could volunteer, just maybe a couple of hours a week, but on a regular basis and a long term.
Great. And what are some of the key challenges? You sort of mentioned the small team and need of volunteers, but what are some of the other key challenges that you face running a foundation like the one you are at the moment?
Well, the whole charity sector is so flooded. There are hundreds of thousands of charities in Australia, and so one of our biggest challenges, I think, is really being heard and seen. We quite often joke in our board meetings that we're one of the best kept secrets. Our particular organisation was founded by one of the most inspiring people I've ever met, and her personal story is what actually sparked. It was reading her biography that actually sparked me getting involved with the foundation. And most people that come to us, it's because of the same reason. They've either seen the movie or read the book. And it's an amazing organisation. It's grassroots. We really make a significant difference. We've been operating for nearly 30 years. And we've actually impacted the lives of over 700,000 children directly. through that, through the work that we do. And, I think that, having an organisation like this that, really does make a big difference in, an impact in kids' lives, that really we know will make a long-term difference in that whole breaking the poverty cycle in Vietnam and Mongolia. So, it's really about how do we get that message out there? How do we get more people knowing about what we do and getting, I suppose, connected to, because I think most people want to actually know that when they're involved with an organisation, it really is making a difference and that it's going to the right place. And so it's really about, for us, getting that message out there. That's by far one of our biggest challenges.
The next section's around the live section. So what are some of the daily habits that help you be successful in running this great foundation?
I think one of the things that you have to have in working in an organisation like this is really you've got to be a jack of all trades. So the thing that we have a lot of different things that we have to manage in working for a charity. So, there's obviously the fundraising and bringing awareness and being connected to our community, but there's also a lot of issues and challenges that we have around compliance and finance that you need to meet as well, given that we are a charity. So one of the habits that I have that I find is just so important is just utilising tools to manage all the tasks in the different areas that we work in. So I do use technology quite a bit for that and really try and implement that within the office so that we can actually keep a track of all the different things that we're doing, because we don't have a big team to be managing finance and legal and governance and marketing. So that's definitely one of the things that I do. And I think the other thing that's really important is to make sure that I actually schedule in the time to do the key things so that you don't get bogged down in the detail. So each week I make sure I schedule in time to focus on the top 3 or 4 things that I need to achieve for the week. And that is scheduled in my diary. So that would have to be one of the most important things for me. Otherwise, it's just so easy to be very reactive in all the emails and phone calls and things that you get and all the demands.
Great. And what are those top 3 or 4 things?
So for me, it would definitely be around connecting with our community. So we have, a lot of really great people out there. So it's about meeting with those. It's about having the conversations with them, people who have actually inquired about how they can be involved and what they can do. Having conversations with people around the challenges that we do, because that's one of our key areas to fundraise. The other one would be about developing the corporate program that we're currently working on. And then also going out, I've really focused my time this year on networking. So actually building a community in the business community in Melbourne in particular, where I am, to go out and meet businesses and meet people that would like to actually partner with us. So it's not that different really, to be honest, from working in a regular business. It operates and needs to operate very much the same. So, my focus, 60% of my time should really be spent on building and growing the organisation.
Yeah, and just the last one on networking, what are some of the key things you've used to work really well in that networking space? Because I know a lot of the BLG audience are building their brand, similar to you, through networking. So what's some tips you could give on that?
Well, I think that it's interesting that one of the things that I did in our own business when I was in the training and development business in Ancora, we had decided to join a BNI group in Melbourne. And I was in that for just over a year before I decided to change over, and to work in the charity full time. And the BNI group have actually just recently added charities into one of their categories for the networking. So I've actually remained in that group, and I've just found it incredibly rewarding, and it's actually working very well for us. So I'm not sure if people are aware with BNI, it's a global referral networking group, and you have a regular weekly commitment. We build relationships, we get to know each other's business, and we actually really look out for how we can actually refer business to each other. They have a philosophy of givers gain. So, it's all about the relationships, having regular contact, and really getting to understand each other's businesses so that we can work together. And I think the reason that it works so well is because we do meet on a regular basis. So I think for me, I find that works really well because they get to know who we are and what we're about. And so it's almost like you have this sales team out there for you. So if they're talking to their clients or their friends and they hear something that, it's like, oh, they actually want to go on one of those challenges, I know exactly who to, you should speak to. So it works really, really well for us.
Yeah, great. And look, we've got quite a few ex-BNI members in the BLG club, and definitely have taken some of the core principles. I know they've been around for a long, long time, and built that into to our community. So really endorse that as a great way of networking. So I won't go into the give section because I think you've done a brilliant job in articulating that already in the build section. But what we'll do now is go to the last section, which is the action section. And you talked about some of the tools that you use to help with the charity. And I must admit, I've helped quite a few charities set up some of those tools. So I'd love to firstly know, what are some of the key apps or tools that you use to run a foundation like yours?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that we've implemented globally recently is we put Office 365 in place. So, that's actually been evolving quite a lot over the past few years, and I actually find that works quite well. Because we're all on the same system now. So even when we're dealing with our team in Vietnam or Mongolia, we're all working off similar platforms now. So I found that to be a really useful tool for us to use. In particular, things like the OneNote, great for taking notes from meetings and board meetings and Skypes that we might have so that we can collaborate and work online together. Of course, being that we have overseas offices, we use Skype quite a lot. So that one is certainly always there. But the other ones are much more around productivity. So for me, because there is so much going on all the time, what's really critical is to capture those thoughts. Otherwise, I just will never go to sleep at night. So one of the apps that's at the top of my phone is just is the reminder list, so that anything that I think of that I need to do, or something that I have just gone, oh yeah, I must do that tomorrow, I can actually jot that down in that reminder list, and then it's out of my head. And then tomorrow I can actually look at scheduling some time to do that. So that would certainly be two of the most popular ones that I use. But there's also a lot of the messaging groups like Yammer, and we also use WhatsApp quite a bit just to, for quick chats as well. So they'd be the most common ones.
Excellent. And certainly know that if you spend time in Asia, you tend to be more WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic. And as far as, they're the sort of the tools, but if you had to summarize your number one personal productivity tip, what would that be for the BLG audience?
As far as the productivity, I think it is certainly whenever I capture those things that I need to do, is scheduling the time to do it. So as far as a habit, really is like in the morning, coming in, looking at what I need to achieve for the day, and actually scheduling all of those things in, and being realistic about what I can and can't do in a day. I tend to be quite optimistic about how much time things will take. So I always schedule in a bit of breakdown time as well, and scheduling that time into my diary. And even if that's half an hour for lunch, going to the gym, if it's not in my diary, I pretty much know it won't happen. So my biggest productivity tip is always schedule the time to do it. Don't just have it on a list to tick off, but actually schedule the time to do it.
And your favourite podcast or book, and why?
Oh, gee, I tend to go for Small Business Big Marketing by Timbo Reid. He does a weekly podcast and interviews some really great guest speakers, and always has, some great tips for marketing. And I don't have a marketing background, but it's so essential in what I do. So that is definitely, one of my go-tos each week. I always look forward to that, and look forward to catching up on them when I get back. So just so much juice comes out of those podcasts.
Yeah, look, it's a great podcast, and a shout out to Tim. I know he's a local Hampton guy where I live in the world. So yes, he's a great guy, and built like you said, a lot of great advice. And speaking of advice, sort of the last question I've got for you is, you've had a wonderful year. A career rather than a year. And, I know you've been with the foundation for 17 years. You've, gone through a journey yourself in changing careers. What some parting advice you would give for people that may be sitting in corporate at the moment or are just starting their own business? What advice would you have for them?
I think it's really just do it. It's really about, I think one of my biggest learnings on my journey, particularly with the, starting my own business and also stepping into the foundation full time, is that just back yourself. Really back yourself and just jump in and do it. Yes, it can be scary, and yes, there are some risks you might take, but just make sure that you have the right things around you to support you, and that might be the right people. So it might be about getting a good business coach or getting a good mentor, or putting yourself through some training to develop yourself in the areas where you may not be strong. But at the end of the day, just take some action and actually jump in there and do it. It will all work out fine.
And where can people find out more about you and the foundation?
Well, certainly for the foundation, you can visit our website, which is www.cncf.org.au, and that is CNCF like crunchy nut cornflakes. So that's the best place to find out about the foundation. And about myself would certainly be on LinkedIn. And if anybody would like to connect, would love to do that, and just mention that this is where you heard about me, and mention that you want to connect through this group.
Excellent. Brilliant. So it's been great having you on, Kirrily. I think, a lot of listeners want to follow their passion, but sometimes don't just do it. And I think you're a great example of someone that has, gone and done that. And I'm really excited to support the foundation in any way that we can as a BLG audience. And we'll make sure that all the links and information is in the show notes, so people can get in contact with you to help those impoverished people in both Vietnam and Mongolia. But thanks for being on the podcast, and I wish you all the best.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Paul. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Build, Live, Give show. If you found this show helpful, please share it with others so we can build businesses, live great lives, and give back to the community. If you would like to join the BLG community, go to our website, www.buildlivegive.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.